What's up, loungers? I hope everybody is doing as great as I am this morning. Listen, guys, we have a lot of topics to get into this morning, but we're not going to be very long because I have a few things I got to do today before I get into the epic show for tonight. Okay. So I definitely wanted to bust it up with the loungers and just kind of speak with you guys real quick in regards to some great topics that came up last night in multiple spaces. Okay. One of those places was shout out to one of my favorite loungers, Alan Logic, who was able to bring up anti-blackness on the show. And we also talked about roasting and some of the differences in those, right? But I actually have a few articles that I want to read on this morning and the history of both, okay? And kind of break down how the differences are between the two and why both are there. And then, kind of figure out who's doing what, so that we're able to keep, in perspective in this particular space, who actually is anti-Black versus who is roasting, and if some are doing both, right? I do think that also it's important to keep in mind some of these things and also what people's feelings are in regards to anti-Blackness, right? Because one thing for sure and two things for certain, no one can tell a Black person what their Black experience is, right? If you're Black and you have, you're just a Black person, then you have an experience as a Black person, okay? And you have a perspective on what is anti-Black. You also have the right to have a perspective on what is roasting, okay? But let's just talk about the history of some of this stuff and how that plays into what we're doing today in our sector, okay? And again, how we can also distinguish the differences in who is actually doing that, and what we can do in regards to those people. We're also going to quickly get into Photon'S live. I know that he likes to take his videos down. So before he does, we're going to get into that, okay? Because it's only one little segment of it that I want to talk about. But I thought it was so funny, okay? So let's go ahead and get into these hot topics, guys. I used to find myself really pissed off with Photon, right? With the stupid stuff he would say and just the dumb shit he would do, right? Until I realized, and I actually met him in person, and then I realized that he be trolling online, right? Like even the personality that he has in real life is not anywhere close to what we see online, right? So I've learned to laugh at the things he says and the things he does, right? But sometimes he still be like pulling at me a little bit with some of the stuff he does, especially when he tries to come between myself and break in or something like that. And he might, but he never really necessarily takes the side, right, per se. But oftentimes you will find him saying particular things just to like piss somebody off or just to get somebody riled up, you know what I'm saying? Like whatever he does. And he's just kind of good at doing that. And we often all just kind of laugh at it and just move on, right? But sometimes you can catch him off guard. Okay. You can catch that guy off guard as well. Okay. And Photon has had a couple of times where he was caught off guard, and not expecting a certain person to like pull up on him while he's talking shit, right? Or whatever. So shout out to the Smoke God. Peace to him. He had a great show the other day. Him and Carrie was on the show. You know, they talked about what they talked about. And you know, that's kind of in Secktah history now. But Photon, right? Photon's ass, you could tell when he's roasting, and you can tell when he really is in his feelings, okay, a little bit. It's always around Carrie Ann that he's in his feelings, okay? Now, most people he be just roasting and saying whatever, you know, going back and forth and throwing jabs and different shit that he does, right? That's what he does. But when it comes to Carrie, right, he throws little jabs, but not as harsh as he used to, right? And then he also, if another man is in her space, right? He notices, okay? He notices that man is in her space, or he notices she is in that man's space, okay? And he will pull that man front and center on his show. As a matter of fact, he will create a live just for that, okay? So not only did he pull Smoke God and pull his quote unquote cards for having Carrie on his panel, okay? But he also felt some type of way when defrauding was in the chat, okay? And just saying hello or whatever defrauding says. And next thing you know, oh, Carrie is not live. Carrie's not live. Like, guys, that shit was hilarious, okay? But so it's just funny sometimes just watching a troll just kind of melt a little bit and be in their feelings. Like, that shit is just so funny, especially over somebody who really roasted him really bad. Like, Carrie really did roast the shit out his ass for months, okay? And then he roasted her too. We all know the story, right? And, you know, everybody threw their little shit in it, whatever, including myself. But the bottom line is, I just find it so hilarious that he really be in his bag over Carrie Ann, right? And it's so obvious, it's not even funny. But he got the right one last night, okay? Because, you know, last night Photon spent a lot of time just pulling up people's, pulling up people's lives and having reactions to it. Nothing really wrong with that, right? That's just kind of part of the YouTube game. But when Smoke pulled up on that ass, I want y'all to hear this conversation, okay? We're going to listen to it right now. We're all going to do this in the name of fair use. And then we'll get into our commentary, okay? So bear with me just a moment while I start playing the video.
So as far as Carrie Ann go, do you acknowledge her as the godmother like how TCTV said?
Yo, hey, what's up, Photon? Who you calling goofy, my nigga?
Woo!
Pull up is back in effect.
So you're not goofy?
No, you goofy.
Are you trying to?
No, I ain't trying to do nothing.
Are you trying to do
nothing? Hey, Photon.
Carrie Ann.
I know you mad. I know you mad because I was able to handle her way better than you was. Get over it. Ain't nobody goofy. Let me get my show off the ground, my nigga, and stop hating.
You
Keep in mind, Photon. You started from the Smoke game.
Peace to the Smoke God.
Yeah.
Hey, Money. Hey, Mrs. Murph. I appreciate y'all being in the building. Shout out to y'all. Money, I got a new members only out. I don't know if you saw it.
She said, "Watch your mouth."
Nah, Photon. Listen, man. You don't got it like me, man. My nuts swing to the left. You don't got it like me, Photon.
I'm not gonna talk about your nuts here.
I know. Hey, Photon. Like I say, bro. Like I say, no one's goofy but you. Period.
How did you handle her? You said,
we're gonna hear this whole thing because this shit is hilarious.
Right now, my shit is up on your screen. My stuff is up on your screen with the woman that you is in love with, dog.
Lord have mercy.
Quiet.
What are you saying? You about to listen, what you about to do? Nah.
On your panel. You was talking about late night
Bro, time. You don't never show my shit. You don't never show my shit, bro. Why you hating, man?
She was hating.
Yeah,
No, you're okay. Good morning. Grand Rising, Melissa Brown.
You punching at the air, though. You punching at the air hard.
Why was your wife so jealous of Carrie Ann?
What you mean? My wife
Why
cool.
was your wife
Everybody
Carrie Ann?
Hey, Photon.
Carrie Ann can't talk to you on a late night?
Photon. I know you hurt, dog. Just get over it, man. The way I
am gonna make you surprised.
Hey, Photon, I know, man. I know it's hurt.
Your porno.
Hey, Photon, you a butt hurt nigga, but it's alright.
You gonna take your porno too.
Hey, Photon, that shit got up under your skin the way I handled her, didn't it? It got up under your skin, boy. You couldn't. Hey, Photon, boy. I'm from the South.
What's up,
That's
bestie?
how we do it. You a northern ass nigga. I'm from the South, nigga. Don't even love that shit. So ain't nobody trying to hear that shit you talking, Photon. That's how you handle a woman. Period. So don't.
Cat
don't
got your tongue, Photon.
Try to downplay it. Try to say it's goofy because your woman came to the power. Yeah. Yeah, don't do that. Don't, man, come on. Photon, the only goofy nigga is you, dog. Listen, dog. The only goofy nigga I see is the nigga with all the talent, but taking everybody else motherfucking material to try to get popping, bro. That shit is not your material, my nigga. That's goofy. Step your motherfucking game up. All that talent you got, if you taking white people material to try to get popping, you calling me goofy? At least my shit is my content. What your shit? And plus, you an editor. You mean to tell me I'm not even an editor and I'm outdoing your ass, nigga? And you taking people's shit? Get the fuck out of here, Photon. You a hater, dog. Any woman you send to my panel, I'ma handle her just like that and send her back to you on a straight, narrow path, you punk. Now say something else, nigga, or kick me off the panel. I'ma keep frying your ass, nigga. Point blank, nigga. I'm your godfather. Stop disrespecting me, Photon.
I'm your godfather.
Nigga, I bodied him, nigga, just like I bodied you. Just like stop playing.
The money. I'm crying right now.
I'm about to cry right now about this shit, nigga. You the one about to cry about this shit.
You're accusing me of why you even asking me?
Yes, child.
Like, what's wrong with this? I'm just saying all you did was subtract by 5. I'm trying to show you.
I don't give a damn what you said. I don't give a damn what you said, Kira. I shut you down first time. Fuck you and stop hating, my nigga.
And that's it.
Point blank. Point blank. You don't never play my shit. Don't play my shit again before I see your ass start. I'm just busting your ass.
Oh, what? Yo, gibberish? This is gonna make.
She called your shit gibberish.
Nah, shut up, Photon. I bodied her, though. She was up there with me. She wasn't with you. Period. That's why you mad.
Hey, I'm listening to you vibe out. You entertaining me in the middle of the night. I'm just listening.
So you was entertaining her in the middle of the night?
Now listen to this.
I know you butt hurt, man. Just get over it, man.
He said, Photon says so. You was entertaining her in the middle of the night? Yo, Photon is in his bag, yo. Oh my God, I didn't know Photon. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to roast you like this over Carrie, but baby. Poor baby. You need to, you need to make up for that bullshit you did. Because you did some real bullshit to Carrie. You did. We're going to go ahead and play this shit.
You just jumped the gun. You thought I was talking about something I wasn't. That's all. It's all right. No, I was talking to TC. I actually had my.
This is smoke going off on Photon because Photon was talking shit and didn't think he was going to pull up in the middle of the night.
Hold on. Go back. This is not what I said.
Yeah, you want to tolerate me
and then go back over and then come back
Why you kept interrupting her, Smoke God? Were you
Man,
afraid
no, that's what a real man do. Man, shut up, learn something,
were you
Photon.
afraid of that she was gonna cut your head
No,
off?
no, Photon. You just need to learn something. Shut up. You had this argument before you go out.
He said, when he leave, I'll be talking again.
It's really kind of weak. And you're using this language of running my mouth. And
Hey, living life.
to
Hey,
tell
living
me
life.
vague,
Appreciate you, sis.
details that aren't even relevant to what we're discussing. And
This is how you handling her? She's
Yeah. Now keep on listening. Shut up. Learn something.
just at the end that I need to go listen more.
No, Carrie was on
So
Smoke's panel, but Photon was playing Smoke's show from the other
damn,
night,
she said a mouthful.
trying to roast Smoke, and Smoke ran down on that nigga.
Nigga, shut up and listen. Nigga, learn something, nigga.
No, it's just we both in the middle of the night.
Yeah, light up.
Yeah, I'm like that right now too. You know, hey,
Yeah.
I know. I heard you, Photon. Keep on watching. And don't be playing with me. You jumped the gun.
No, you're butthurt. You're the one that's butthurt.
Now get over it.
No, I'm not.
Damn, now she want to talk about your butt.
Yeah, I know it's hurt you.
Yo, he mad. She want to talk about his butt.
Boy, it hurt me.
She wondering if your butt is hurt. Damn.
I know, Photon. It hurt your heart, ain't it, boy? You know, I ain't doing Carrie. You ain't ready for this dog. You ain't ready.
Late night.
I know.
Butt hurt.
Hey, Photon. With yours though, Photon.
This is cupcake.
No, I'm just telling you that all you did was subtract by 5.
This man thinks they were cupcaking, and that's why he created a show.
She had a good old time in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Listen to him.
Are you okay? Are you sweating? You good? Not mad. I'm not mad. But
I don't think you're mad, but you're very dismissive. Like, oh, you didn't listen close enough.
Here,
so I missed the part where you explained yourself, though.
Carrie, let me tell you something about Smoke.
Go.
Smoke is not gonna put no bullshit out there for nobody to come and challenge him in that way. I was trained better than that. That's how I know this.
Well, I'm looking at how you're dealing with being challenged, and you're kind of doing everything but clarifying your point. You're attacking.
We're almost done with this, guys.
I know that you're arguing. You don't have the whole facts, so I was trying to give you the whole facts, so then you can have your argument.
Well, can I ask my question?
No. See, the thing is, Carrie, you so used to talking to pussies. You're not used to talking to a real.
See, I peeped that.
Yeah. I was talking about your ass.
Hey, Muslim, appreciate you.
Wait a minute, is Smoke trying to throw some shots?
You damn right.
Triggs, the winner.
Bro, you an asshole.
When you're the one that won't explain what your point was.
I got a wife in there. You think I give a damn how you feel tonight?
No, it's just we both in the middle of the night.
So look, here's the deal. You jumped the gun.
No, you're butthurt. You're the one that's butthurt.
Now get over it.
No, I'm not.
No, you is.
No, I
You get over it. Yeah. I ain't the one, Carrie. You ain't ready for this dog. You ain't ready.
No, I'm just telling you that all you did was.
I'm wondering your wife listening and watching your ha and kikiing with the side eye. Where your wife at just listening to this woman late night laughing and
You hear this nigga, y'all? Now, usually he be playing. He's not playing right now, okay? And it's funny because Smoke's wife was in the room, okay? So let's go ahead and keep going.
kikiing to you.
Hey, look, she was right there beside you.
There's nothing for you to
She was
say.
right there beside you. Hey, right there beside. I had two of them.
Me too, Muslim. Same here.
I'm surprised.
Especially over them lying assholes.
Over me saying that. I'm surprised that you spoke.
I'm not mad. But
No, I don't think you're mad, but you're very dismissive. Like, oh, you didn't listen close enough.
Here,
so I missed the part where you explained yourself, though.
Carrie, let me tell you something about Smoke.
So
not gonna put no bullshit out there for nobody to come and challenge him in that way. I was trained better than that. That's how I know this.
well, I'm looking at how you're dealing with being challenged, and you're kind of doing everything but clarifying your point. You're attacking, you're disrupting, you're getting personal.
I know that you're arguing, you don't have the whole facts. So I was trying to give you the whole facts, so then you can have your argument.
Well, can I ask my question?
No. See, the thing is, Carrie, you so used to talking to pussies. You're not used to talking to a real man.
That's not true.
You're talking to a real man.
Messy Muzz, is there anything you would like to say?
Nah, man, I just came up here to keep y'all company.
Messy Muzz.
Chad T doesn't like that. Are you doing this? Are you trying to spite Chad T?
Nah, I'm good.
Did you come back to get Chad T upset? Because we're talking about black issues here.
You said I'm good. I ain't even getting in this shit, nigga.
As black as it gets. But I mean, you be my guest. I mean, I'm not.
You learned your lesson, Muslim.
I'm just trying to understand your motive. But
Nah, I'm just tired of being in chat.
Salute, Pillsbury.
What's up, Pills? What's up, Smoke?
Girl,
What's
listen.
going on, big dog?
But all them receipts were weak as fuck. Like every single one of them lying ass receipts were so weak it wasn't even fucking funny. I did a show on that the other night. I couldn't believe how weak them motherfucking receipts was. I should have believed it, but them bitches was better off just not even going live at all, or just talking shit, just roasting and talking shit, but showing us that bullshit. That made them bitches look like straight liars. Just in the story. I knew Breaking the Culture was a liar anyway, but
man, I can't call it.
how do you think Smoke handled this? You had
Salute,
a conversation with this woman. You was on her live. I think you even got a wrench, maybe.
Nah, I ain't getting no wrench, dog.
Right. Why is that? Do you want one?
Nah. I don't want no wrenches.
you don't want no wrench,
I'm
Muzz?
not over here. I'm talking about over there.
I couldn't understand, man. I'm talking about, man, they were talking over my head, man, with that math stuff. I was like, what? Man, I couldn't understand.
Look, what I'm going to do, this what I'm going to do, maybe tonight or tomorrow, I'm going to show y'all something.
I think I might have showed the Teresa receipt. If not, I'll show it right now. I can show you the Teresa receipt right now. But I went over it on my show. So you don't have to watch her show if you don't want. You can check out mine.
Show y'all how y'all can apply what I showed her to your everyday
That shit was
life.
5 hours.
See, a lot of people went to school, right? And the school taught us shit, but they didn't teach us how to apply that.
5 hours full of lies.
So I'm gonna show y'all something either tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, because I went over all the receipts. I went over that. That it was Teresa and Redbone receipt was together. Okay, and then there was a drama receipt, and then there was a Me and Mine's receipt that Breaking the Culture tried to show, and I showed how both of them bitches was lying. So.
Nah, Photon, all I'm saying is give me a little respect. Let your boy get off the ground there a little bit before you start hating, my nigga. That's all I'm saying.
No, I'm not hating. I'm just saying put in a good word with me over there since you be.
And also, what I'll do, I meant to do this the other day. I'll put a link to her video in my description box and have the timestamps for where you can go and see exactly where their lies come in. Okay, and how you could see that they're lying.
That's gonna be a regular. Is she gonna be a regular?
Unfortunately for Breaking, Star don't take her fucking shit down. Breaking like to take her shit down, but Star don't take her shit down. So you can go right back and look at that shit.
Over there in the metaverse.
Man, look, I'm a train carrier. Carrier gonna be a monster.
Child.
Carrier gonna be straight leather, ready for the world. I'm be able to work with Carrier, be able to do things with her you wasn't able to do with her Photon. I gotta do it.
And how are you able
Yeah,
to
I was
do
just
that?
listening
What
in on that.
is
I have
it
to go.
you
I have to go
have?
back
Is
and
it
listen
just
to it all the way.
Southern twang? I mean, what is it about you
Yeah, it's that too.
that I need to learn? Am I gonna learn your ways, the ways of the master, by studying?
Everybody
how
hit the
you
like button
interact
for me.
with her?
There's only one smoke, Photon. I'm sorry, brother.
So are y'all gonna be the new power couple of the Secktah? Like,
No.
gonna tap in, and y'all gonna give us these math.
No, that's my student. I'm gonna have a lot of students. The metaverse gonna be popping.
What was that? What is that? You call it that math? Those math?
That's called gematria.
Right.
You can use that. I can show y'all how to use that.
I've heard of it before. I just don't. I've never used it.
Make a lot of money, but I don't know if I should show y'all.
Is that money spell? So you got the two.
No. No, I'm talking about for real. It's no spell. I can really show y'all some shit, but I really think I'm just gonna keep that in the tuck. I'm just gonna play.
Yeah, because they ain't ready for that kind of stuff here.
So gematria is when you substitute numbers for the Hebrew alphabet or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's part of it. So like,
that's part of it.
With
Yeah.
math, it's like math and science, man. Believe it or not, is one and the fucking same.
One and the same. Yes,
so
it is.
Like in your state, you know how they be playing them lottery numbers and stuff, right? Yeah. You can apply that shit to those lottery numbers, man, and I can like show y'all some shit where you can actually sort of come out on top.
Right.
But, you know, I ain't gonna do it if people ain't ready for it. I gotta see if people are ready for it.
Right.
You have a lot of people.
So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end that right there. I didn't want to play the whole video. I just wanted to give y'all an idea of Photon and his real feelings about Carrie. Okay, because sir, you be roasting and trolling and different things like that, and I've seen the differences in those things, right? But this particular one, you was in your bag, bro. And we got you, okay? We've been getting you a couple times lately. Everybody been got lately, okay? All of us been got lately, shit. We all been caught slipping and every so often. So anyway, I just had to get into that because I thought that shit was fucking hilarious, okay? But what I really, really want to talk about today is anti-blackness and roasting, okay, in the Black community and how that does affect us. The conversation I had with Alan Logic, and peace to Alan. He had a great show. Make sure that you guys go over and subscribe to What You're Going to Do About It. Has an excellent panel. Most of the time, I usually really do love his panels. And, you know, I really had a great time on the panel last night. Had a great conversation with him and Josephine last night. It was a great, great topic that we talked about. And we were able to get to the bottom of that conversation. Even though Proton likes to go and make things appear like people are beefing and it's with her versus them, you know how these niggas be trying to do, right? Ultimately, the conversation was great, right? And I was able to get an understanding of where Alan was coming from. And he was also able to get an understanding of where I was coming from. And it was just simply because we were able to dialogue with each other, right? There's a difference in talking at somebody as opposed to dialoguing with somebody, right? So I really enjoyed that portion of the conversation. I also enjoyed listening to Joe and hearing her side of it as well, and her listening to my side of it as well too, right? And the beautiful Bernice, shout out to her. She was also in on the conversation. So basically, to make a long story short, what ended up being the conversation was Slander God and how Alan felt that Slander God's behavior in the sector is anti-Black, okay? And I never felt like his behavior was anti-Black, okay? What I always felt like from Slander is, and just based off of Slander Ave, the history of Slander Ave, how things have been since that channel came about, has been just a place where we all go and roast each other. I have been in Slander's chat roasting and doing some of my best roasting in Slander's chat, okay? Going back and forth with different people. They going back and forth with me. It's a whole show in the chat, right? As opposed to even what's going on the panel. So it'd be a whole bunch of stuff happening on the panel and then a bunch of stuff going on in the chat. And we're just roasting back and forth and just boom, boom, boom. You know what I'm saying? And just doing that. I never particularly looked at that as anti-Blackness, right? Now, lately, there have been some anti-Black statements that have come up in the sector. I think we all have heard Starbird talking about people being niggers and using the whole ER word and actually driving that point home, right? I think people have also not so much engaged with them behind the scenes and really been, hanging out with these people. But I think that this is such a small space. Everybody just kind of watches everybody, right? And people might go over to that space and even talk in their chat and feel comfortable doing that and not necessarily agree with everything that they're saying and doing. I think I've been trying to stress that for a long time in this sector, right? So what ends up happening is misunderstandings happen. People start thinking different things. Give you a prime example. AAS had no problem with Slander Ave lately. She had a problem with it when Let Me See Your Transcript was there. It was an issue then. But as soon as she was able to come to Slander Ave and roast and enjoy it and keep at positively hating every chance she got, it wasn't a problem until somebody paid the Slander Ave fee to have that bitch removed for a month. Okay. Once that happened, she was in her feelings about that, right? Because now the game has changed for her. She, likes to control the narrative and everything. So if she has a space that she can freely run and she can feel like she's able to control the narrative, even if she's not controlling the narrative, but in her mind, having a wrench or having even though she didn't have a wrench, but having the ability to even speak in that chat and just say whatever she wants to, in her mind, she feels like this is controlling the narrative. Okay. So Slander, he doesn't give a fuck about anybody's thoughts or feelings. Nobody's controlling any narratives or anything. It's pretty much anything goes in that motherfucker. He reminds me of a lot of hood niggas I know that just like to roast. You understand what I'm saying? And just go back and forth doing that whole roasting thing, light up an L and just roast each other, right? That's what it reminds me of. So, and again, this is subjective, okay? Everybody is entitled to their thoughts on what they think about, a situation. And I want to make that very, very clear for a reason, okay? Because I experience anti-blackness in this sector, okay, in multiple ways. There was a video, and again, shout out to Isa Antonia, who still has a copy of that video on her channel, okay, where Breaking the Culture actually did make multiple racial statements towards me and my family, okay? This is the reason why she's being dragged right now, all right? So because of all of that, other people in the sector have felt and have said, well, this isn't so bad and you should just move on and you should just leave it alone. And I'm not just talking about trolls. There's been a couple of people who, as content creators, have actually expressed that. Now, I don't know if they just weren't aware of what this dusty bitch was saying, right? But they had a lot of pushback from me and what I had to say and my response to all of this. You see what I'm saying? So, hey, Brixton, I appreciate you being in the building. So, and I'll get to you guys' comments in just a moment. So, the problem with all of this is, yes, you can make an objective statement about what somebody else's experience is, right? But you got to allow people to be subjective on what they feel is anti-blackness, okay? Because I felt that these statements were anti-black. Other people have felt the same, right? And we've been on a campaign against this bullshit, okay? Now, Alan's feelings towards Slander wasn't necessarily anti-black itself with the statement that Slander had, what his grievance was, okay? And the grievance was that Slander had reposted some paperwork that AAS posted, okay? And because of that, he felt this was anti-black. Once he told me what the source was of where Slander got this, I then felt that also could look anti-black, right? Because we know AAS has been on a campaign of anti-blackness since we've known her, okay? She has been on this campaign against Umar. Anybody she felt was a supporter of Umar, especially the darker they are, the blacker this person is, she, puts all kinds of stuff on them. She has done this to multiple people in this space. Okay. She has attempted to get people's jobs taken, attempted to dox people's families, dox people's backgrounds, all kinds of different things, and put this out, in a hateful environment, and create a hateful environment by causing little rifts back and forth in between different people and making it as if it's colorist and different things like this. And she's done this in this space, just unhinged for an extended period of time. Okay. So the issue to me is not so much slander God, right? To me, I'm not talking about Alan. The issue to me is not so much slander God. And I'll tell you why. Okay. Because like I said, I'm used to slander God just being slander God, right? This is what they do over there. This is what happens over there, right? But I can't call him anti-black for that. Not because I don't feel like what he reposted could very well appear anti-black, right? But just simply because I don't think he was coming from that space, okay? I do think he was coming from a space of roasting. And oftentimes in this sector, people will dogpile upon each other with various roasts. For instance, Shakim had this roast out with me back in the day. Shout out to my bro, Shakim. Shakim had this roast out with me where I was like a RoboCop, right? Poison Reloaded picked up that same shit and was doing that same shit. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't a big deal. It was funny to me, right? The only thing I didn't like was the dog. And I had a problem with that. I felt like that was anti-black. And I explained why, right? The other issues I didn't particularly care about, but that I had a problem with, right? And I spoke on that. But that was subjective, right? In my opinion, that was anti-black. There were plenty of people that said they didn't feel like that was anti-black, right? They just felt like it was a roast. Other people saw it exactly the way I saw it, right? That it was anti-black, right? So I think the importance here of all of this is to just understand that anti-blackness is a wide range. That's a pretty wide brush, right? And everybody has, as a black person, their experience of what anti-blackness is, okay? And we can't distinguish for each other what that is. That's what I think is important not to try to do, and not to try to gray those areas, right? Because that's when anti-blackness just kind of comes in and is able to come in and kind of bite us in the ass, or bite us, backdoor us without us knowing it or without us noticing. And we can't afford that as a people. We can't afford to just keep allowing these kinds of things to happen, right? These kinds of coonish things to happen. So again, I don't want to think that what slander did was anti-black. I do think, though, as content creators, as black people, I think we need to think about what material we might be using to roast somebody, right? Or where we're getting that material from. Is the person that we're getting the material from a racist, right? Because if I was to like roast one of my worst enemies in this sector, right? Even breaking the culture, even with her black side, with her mother side, she's still, half black, even though she don't recognize it. Okay, except for when she's arguing with somebody. But she still has a side of blackness, right? I'm not going to take a racist statement about her and use that against her, right? I'm not going to go to a Klansman, and a Klansman says something about her, and I take that same statement and use that against her. I wouldn't do that. I just wouldn't, right? Because it goes against the whole idea of roasting. It goes against the whole history of what we do with roasting. And it changes the entire dynamic, okay? And it makes it actually anti-black depending on the source, okay? I'm not telling anybody what to do or how to do it. I'm just saying that this is something to think about and something to contemplate, okay? when you are and when we are roasting each other, when we are going back and forth with each other, when we're doing different things, where are we getting this stuff from? How, how can that be perceived, right? Can that be perceived as anti-Black? There's some people out here that are just gone, right? Stargate is a lost cause. She ain't going to get checked until somebody in another community or another space checks their motherfucking asses. And it's going to happen all at once. It's going to happen with Binary and everything. And that's unfortunate for Binary, right? Because he's going to be out there with her and, they'll be doing whatever they're doing. And he won't be able to save her from that because people are not going to accept that kind of behavior. It's just no matter what you do. They just know that in this particular space, they're able to do that unchecked, okay? And that is speaking to a bigger problem to me, as opposed to, all this other stuff, right? I'm thinking like what we allow in this space, who we allow into this space, into our spaces, I'll say that, speaks volumes about the condition of this sector, right? It definitely does. Because in other spaces, that just wouldn't be tolerated. All right. I'm not saying that. And I want to make this very, very, very clear. Right. I want to make this very clear in the differences between this space right here in the Umar sector and like the T sector, the Black T sector, the Black church sector, the Black beef sector, all of those things. Okay. I'm not saying that roasting and actual fighting and bullshit doesn't happen in those spaces, because it does, right? And even in other spaces, that doesn't necessarily happen. There's even a roasting space. Shout out to Joe. She was talking about this yesterday. There's even a roasting space on YouTube where you can roast one another. And, the first person to get in their feelings and start trying to dock somebody and all that stuff, they get put the fuck out the group. You understand? Like, that's the kind of stuff that happens out here. But in this space, it's kind of an anything goes, whatever, everybody just kind of deal with it. And then, when you get the deal with it consequences of that, everybody's like, oh my God, I can't believe, that this is what's going on. But this is the space that was built, right? Like I said, this is the AAS sector. Okay. This is her sector at this point, because this is the space that and the environment that she has created, right? She has created an environment that people just overlook the NR, the ER word, because we've got actual white supremacists sitting in the clouds thinking that this is okay, cash apping people like Stargate, sending her money to do stuff like this. So she's happily willing and able to go and openly do this kind of stuff because this is normal to her. You understand what I'm saying? So, but you got to distinguish the differences in the two, right? I don't think that necessarily using somebody's content or taking, a source from them, to roast one of their ops is necessarily anti-Black, right? But I do think that, again, with this small community and this small space, you got to keep all of that in mind when it comes to being, subjective or objective to what anti-Blackness is. Okay. And I just think that's really, really, really important. I'll get over to your comments in just a second, guys. But what I want to do is read about the Dozens game real quick. Okay. And we're going to get into that and just kind of talk about this and go a little bit deeper into this. We talked about this a little bit the other day, but we're really going to get into this morning. Okay. So the Dozens is a game played between two contestants in which the participants insult each other until one of them gives up. It's common in African-American communities. The Dozens is almost exclusively played in front of an audience who encourage the participants to reply with increasingly severe insults in order to heighten the tension and consequently make the contest more interesting to watch. Comments in the game may focus on the opposite player's intelligence, appearance, competency, social status, and financial situation. Disparaging remarks about the other player's family members are common, especially regarding their mother. Commentary is often related to sexual issues, and this version of the game is referred to as the Dirty Dozens. According to sociologist Harry Lefevre and journalist John Leland, the game is played almost entirely by African Americans. Other ethnic groups often fail to understand how to play the game and can take remarks in the dozens seriously. Its popularity is higher among low-income and urban communities, but it is also found in middle-class and rural settings. Both men and women participate, but the game is more commonly played amongst men. Some of the terminologies used for the dozens are blazing, roasting, hiking, capping, clowning, ranking, ragging, reeking, crumbing, sounding, checking, joning, woofing, wolfing, skinning, sigging, scoring, signifying, or jiving. Okay, while the insults themselves are also known as snaps. Okay, so let's read about the origins of this. The first academic treatment of the dozens was made in 1939 by Yale-based psychologist and social theorist John Dollard, who described the importance of the game amongst African American men and how it is generally played. Dollard's description is considered pioneering and accurate. Dollard originally wrote that he was unaware of how the term dozens developed, although he suggested a popular 12-part rhyme may have been the reason for its name. He only speculated on how the game itself grew to such prominence. Other authors following Dollard have added their theories. Author Leland described the etymology, writing that the term is a modern survival of an English verb to dozen, dating back at least to the 14th century, and meaning to stun, stupefy, daze, or to make insensible, torpid, or powerless. Amuzi Chimizi, writing in the Journal of Black Studies in 1976, connects the dozens to a Nigerian game called Okocha Nakocha, literally translated as making disparaging remarks. This form of the game is played by children and adolescents and takes place in the evening in the presence of parents and siblings. Commentary among the Igbo is more restrained. Remarks about family members are rare and are based more in fanciful imaginings than participants' actual traits. In contrast, during the game in Ghana, which is also commonly played in the evenings, insults are frequently directed at family members. Amiri Baraka independently concluded that the dozens originated in Africa and states that they are a surviving adaptation of African songs of recrimination. Author and professor Mona Lisa Saloy posits a different theory, stating in African American oral traditions in Louisiana in 1998 that the dozens has its origins in the slave trade of New Orleans, where deformed slaves, generally slaves punished with mutilation or for disobedience, were grouped in lots of a cheaper dozen for sale to slave owners. For a black to be sold as part of the dozens was the lowest blow possible. Very interesting. Now, the purpose and practice. The dozens is a pattern of interactive insult evident among all classes of African Americans, among men and women, children and adults. Usually 2 participants engage in banter, but always in front of others who incite the participants to continue the game by making the insults worse. Frequently used topics among players who played the dozens are put in the dozens are one's opponent's lack of intelligence, ugliness, alleged homosexuality, alleged incest, cowardness, poor hygiene, and exaggerations of physical defects such as crossed eyes. Participants in the dozens are required to exhibit mental acuity and proficiency with words. In his memoir, Die Nigger Die, 1969, H. Rap Brown writes that the children he grew up with employed the dozens to kill time and stave off boredom in the way that whites might play Scrabble. Brown asserts playing the game is a form of mental exercise. Sociologist Harry Lefevre states that verbal skill and wit is just as valued among African Americans as physical strength. Verbal facility is thus a criterion that is used to separate the men from the boys. According to author John Leland, the object of the game is to stupefy and daze one's opponents with swift and skillful speech. The meaning of the words, however, is lost in the game. The object of the game is the performance. Adolescents incorporate more sexual themes in their versions, often called the Dirty Dozens, and the language also becomes more playful with participants, including rhymes, such as several ones like, if you want to play the dozens, play them fast. I'll tell you how many bulldogs your mammy had. She didn't have one. She didn't have two. She had 9 damn dozens, and then she had you. All right, so here's another one. Here it says, I was walking through the jungle with my dick in my hand. I was the baddest motherfucker in the jungle land. I looked up in the tree, and what did I see? Your little black mama tried to piss on me. I picked up a rock and hit her in the cock and knocked that bitch at about half a block. So those are just some examples of some of the roasting. Okay, so analysis. A variety of explanations have been offered for the popularity of the dozens. Its development is intertwined with the oppression African Americans encountered, first as slaves and later as second-class citizens. John Dollard viewed the dozens as a manifestation of frustration aggression theory, a theory that he helped develop. He hypothesized that African Americans, as victims of racism, have been unable to respond in kind towards their oppressors and instead shifted their anger to friends and neighbors, as displayed in the strings of insults. Folklorist Alan Dundas asserted that an approach based on psychoanalytic theory, American oppression ignores the possibility that the dozens may be native to Africa. In addition to similar forms of verbal combat found in Nigeria and Ghana, where many African Americans have ancestral roots, Bantu and Kisi boys have been observed dueling verbally by attacking each other's mothers. The game is also viewed as a tool for preparing young African Americans to cope with verbal abuse without becoming enraged. The ability to remain composed during the dozens is considered a half mark of virtue among many African Americans. In the deepest sense, the essence of the dozens lies not in the insults, but in response of the victim. Taking umbrage is considered an infantile response. Maturity and sophistication bring the capability to suffer the vile talk with aplomb at least, and hopefully with grace and wit. Nonetheless, many such contestants do end in fights. Abraham states that when African Americans reach a certain age between 16 and 26, the game loses much of its appeal and attempts to enter into sparring contests often results in violence. John Leyland writes that the loser of the dozens is the one who takes his opponent's words at face value, therefore ending his own performance in the back and forth exchange. What I like about this article, right, and I will put a link to it in my description box, is how it goes through the different theories, right, of how this came about. It also goes into the history of the dozens and where this happens across the world in different places, right, particularly in Africa, and how us as African Americans and other, anti-ADOS or people who aren't ADOS, right, how we have roots to Africa. And so, the things that are just embedded in our DNA and the things that our people did are just things that we continue to do, right? And we don't want to allow other people to decide why we're doing it, right? Such as the John Dollards and, the other white people who wrote about their encounters with us, right? And what we were doing and what they think our experiences are for why we're doing it, right? That we're an oppressed people, that, we're turning on each other because of it. No, these are ways that we actually, practice mental exercise and different things like this that we have done for centuries, right? And started in Africa, clearly. And, that is something that I want us to keep in mind when we are talking about the roasting of one another, okay? And how we're doing that. And we just kind of go and just stay on our toes, regarding that. That's one thing that I actually did in my family with the kids, right? We did a lot of roasting when they were growing up, when, and now they still do it. We roast each other. They roast me. I roast them. And I kept them on their toes with stuff like that, so they wouldn't be caught off guard with something like that, right? And they wouldn't feel so offended or so bothered if somebody's just simply roasting them, right? And that is something that I wanted us to just discuss, was the history of this and why we're here and how we're here. Now, I'm about to get into anti-blackness as well, because I think it's important to also speak on that, and to know what that's all about, before we even get, as well, while we're talking about all of this. Okay. Because again, it's important to understand, the difference in having an objective point of view over something, and also having a subjective point of view, because you have actually physically experienced something with someone, right? So let's go ahead and get into the comments real quick. Peace, Brixton. I appreciate you being in the building. You said peace, Miss T. Pre. And you said, you know what? There was a couple other comments. Oh, child, listen. Okay, yes. Yes, the Ave has always been a freedom of speech kind of place. That's what I thought too. And like I said, I've always had my best roasting, some of my best roasting on the Ave, on Photons, Photonica, all that stuff. You said, I enjoyed that live. You said, hey, Joe and Bernice. Okay, so, all right, let's go ahead and go down here. You said, money to burn. Yep. You said, happy Sunday, Brixton. You said, Braxton, Brixton. You said, wow, living life to the fullest, unbelievable. You said, living life to the fullest. Hope you're good, sis. Hi. You said, Brixton, I'm enjoying the little summer we're getting. Yeah. You said, living life to the fullest. Trust me, when the sun fades, Portugal is calling my name next month. You said, AAS had a problem with Teresa going everywhere and Ray being, let me see your transcripts mod. Yet Breaking goes to her ops channels from day one. Okay. Like, child, it's the hypocrisy for me. You said, that's a good idea, Brixton. Quick flight. You said, I think people need to realize that we are members of a degenerate people group, often sentiments expressed about us. We be subconsciously absorbed. Nevertheless, I don't think slander is anti-Black. I don't either. But I hear what you're saying about that too. That's interesting. And you said, living life, and I appreciate you being in the building, keeping it somber. You said, living life, some live by the mantra, rules for thee, but not for me. Oh yeah, of course. Absolutely. You said, keeping it 100. Right. You said, also, you didn't come across as a hater when you gave Carrie Ann advice. She does have more to lose. Yeah. I didn't want to get in the middle of that conversation, but I did. Y'all know I have my sentiments about Carrie, right? And I just want to stay out of that one, but I do agree. I think that I think they both have stuff to lose, and I think it's well, rather let me tell y'all about that, right? Let me give y'all an example right there, and I like that you brought that up, because I meant to bring that up in this conversation, so we're going to bring this up. The hypocrisy with all that, right? And how they were so dead set on contacting Carrie Ann's job, right? Because they were trying to say she's anti-Black, she's anti-Black men, she's anti-this. But we got a whole bitch calling people niggers, right? On video, doubling down on calling people niggers. And we got people saying 100, yeah, 100, yeah, go at them, go girl, you go girl. And that's not a problem, but those same people want to call Carrie's job. Like, and I never heard Carrie call nobody a nigger. You know, maybe she did. I don't know. But I've never heard her come out like that, right, against Black people. But this bitch is calling people actual niggers. And nobody got no beef with that shit. Like, I really find that really, really strange. And I found that to be very hypocritical around here, right? Like the same people who were up in arms about Carrie making videos, all this stuff, video after video after video after video, giving out her number, giving out the address and all this other stuff, don't have nothing to say. Where's Stargate's jobs number? Where's her address? The address for Stargate. Where is Stargate's jobs phone number at? Where's all that information at? Can we get a hold of Stargate's boss? Like, does anybody want to find out Tamara's boss, right? I mean, how come nobody knows all of that? We don't know about her Buffalo address, right? And all this stuff. But y'all want to be looking up Carrie Ann because y'all disagree with some shit she said about Black men, right? And that is the reason why she should lose her job is because she feels unsafe around black men, right? But we got the same black men and women that were so up in arms about that are literally like cheering on a black woman calling people niggers, not niggas, niggers. Like, really? Over and over again. Like, this is crazy to me. It's just the hypocrisy at its finest around here, child. I'm just saying. You said, then Rob, you said your advice was correct to me. And you said, I know living life. What I've noticed about her is she will take a personal issue and morph it into where a whole group is being attacked. Is part of her disorder. You said, I'll leave her to her madness. She loves conflict to her own detriment. You said, keeping it 100. Anyone that gives her friendly advice, she'll hate on. Child. You said, exactly. She loves an echo chamber. Like another person we know. Girl. Hey, brother of a certain age, I appreciate you being in the building. Say good morning, all. You said, keeping it 100. Plus, she enjoys arguing and thrives on it. You said, see, that's why I stray on the sidelines, okay? Just saying. You say, hey, Mr. R, brother of a certain age. And you say, hey, money to burn. Riz. You say, hey. You say, hey, Riz, appreciate you. You said, greetings, brother of a certain age. You said, absolutely living life. And to state that anyone who disagrees with her is jealous of her single lifestyle is preposterous. She loves calling people hoes, but is obviously starving for the D. Okay. You said, money to burn. Hey, lovely. You said, living life. What's good? What's guap? You said, not cross-eyed though, right? You said, just goes to show you that women get evil if that back don't get broke on the regular, or if it don't get broke off properly, child. Shit, girl. You might want to check into that, ladies. Okay, anybody that's out here just going off, you might want to get yourself. I'm just saying, it got to be some good shit. Okay, got to be some good shit. You said, keeping it 100. No one's envy her single lifestyle. I don't believe it was by choice either. Get a dog and die alone so your dog can eat you when hunger licks it. You know what? You said, no, not how many bulldogs your mammy had. Whoa, that's mean. Okay, but that's how they be roasted out here, right? You said, damn, living life. You said they were roasting with a whole 16 bars. Okay. You said, for real, keeping it 100, because I can't even equate to this type of game. You said, keeping it 100, I'll stick with grandchildren and my family. You said, to back and forth exchange is you don't exist, but that's just me. Mm-hmm. You say, exactly, living life. Just because your lifestyle is different doesn't make it better or worse than anyone else's. People who are always putting others down are obviously bitter and scorn. That is definitely a fact. If you find yourself always having to find something to go in on somebody about all the time, like Carrie spent a lot of time, even with me, right? I had to go do a video for y'all to prove to y'all that I hadn't done shit to this bitch. It was me just telling her about herself because she kept coming for me. And then when I finally cussed her the fuck out, I mean, she just went on like a year-long campaign. Just every time I turned around, this bitch was talking about me. It got to the point where I just said, fuck it, members, we about to go ahead and just go ahead and pay y'all every time this bitch talking shit. And she's finally stopped. Like, she finally, I guess she realized, like, okay, you know, maybe it's overboard. You know what I'm saying? But I understand what you're saying. Like, nobody want to be going back and forth with her weird ass, but that's what the fuck she like to do. You said, who raised this heifer anyways? You said, most call it roasting. AFWs call it harassment, right? Mm-hmm. But then they get into anti-blackness with their harassment. And we're going to get into that in just a second. You said, keeping it 100 plus. You said, right. Plus, I envy people who live a truly free lifestyle. I wish I could, right? You said, or I should say the back and forth exchange has ended when I've decided you no longer exist. I'm hella mean. That's what I'm saying. That's how I am, right? I'll decide when I'm done with a motherfucker. And when I'm done, then you just don't exist no more. Like, that's just what it is. But I'll decide that. Right? I'll say when I'm done, right? Facts though. You said, Brixton, It's so childish. You say it's ridiculous. You said, I heard Portugal is nice, Brixton. I did too. I've never been there before, guys. You said, living life to the fullest. I normally go port in October at least every year, but I went there in June last year, and their summer is different. Oh, okay. You said, what has Carrie done that is job calling worthy, that is worse than anything else that anybody else in the sector has done? Exactly. I don't think what she's done is worth calling her job, right? I don't. But like I said, the same people who are in their bag about Carrie trying to call her job ain't looking for Stargate's job. Like, nobody's looking for her massage therapist job. Nobody's looking to see where she works for, who she works for up there in Buffalo. No, does anybody care where Tamara works? Like, while she's calling us niggers, but you don't have no problem with that. But you got a problem with Carrie saying she feels unsafe around black men. Like, I understand that, but she not around you, or not around your kids, and not around your brothers and sisters, or fathers, or mothers, or anybody. So who cares, right? But this bitch is literally making anti-black statements. Literally making anti-black statements. Breaking the Culture went out of her way to go off on Carrie in the middle of the night and then erase the live, talking shit about Carrie this, Carrie that, and how could this woman be anti-black? And DJ Drama, you had an anti-black woman on your panel that would do something like this, and all she does is talk. This the outrage, the fake outrage that came out over that, right? And everybody jumped out the window with, yeah, call her job, put her address on the panel, put her address out here. Everybody call Carrie's job. Nobody is saying anything about Stargate calling people a nigger. Y'all don't have no problem with that. I'm looking at y'all very sideways for that. Definitely looking at y'all very sideways for that, for sure. He said, Brixton, try another island. You said, living life to the fullest. Al-Qaeda is nice too, but the racism is kind of, oh, wow. Okay. You said, got to break back on a regular. Okay. You said, nothing money to burn. Being a bitch doesn't warrant your job being called. Exactly. Portugal got some freaky behavior. Oh, yeah. He said, Brixton, I hear you. Cyprus, okay, but the Europeans stare. Oh, wow. You said, over here, hating on y'all, Brixton, living life to the fullest while I'm way off in this corner, not only of the world, but of the whole USA, right? She gets obsessive with her hoe roasting. Yeah. You said, well, keeping it 100, can't argue you there. You said, money, you guys are lucky as you can holiday in your own country. Yeah, that's true. You said, that's no fun, though, living life to the fullest. And yes, I'm whining. We are definitely whining. We want to be over there soaking up the Portugal skies and all this, and the Al-Qaeda beaches, and we want to be there. Okay, that's where we want to go. We sick of New Jersey beaches and California beaches, okay, and Florida beaches and shit. He says Stargate works at Hand and Stone. Nah, psych joke. I don't know. I don't know. Don't know where she working at. I don't know where Tamara working. He said us grown folks didn't agree with calling anyone's job. Exactly. Ain't nobody trying to do that shit. But I just find it amazing that nobody has the same outrage for Stargate, and we're not looking for her job, and there's no reward to find her job and all this other stuff. There's none of that going on. He said, money to burn. You guys have states the size of countries in Europe. How about that? He said, Star thinks yelling is going to make someone listen. Po child. Her and Breaking the Culture think that shit. They think if they keep repeating it and if they rapid fire saying it, everybody's just going to believe it. He said, right, Brixton, huge states. Yeah, like Texas and shit. Y'all right. Y'all ain't lying. He said, okay, I hear you. Right, T-Pre. Okay, so listen, guys. Let's go ahead and get into, you said Nickar or Nika sounds the same to us Brits. Okay, and it sounds, listen, it doesn't sound the same to me. Nigga and nigger do not sound the same to me. Okay, now, like you said, it sounds the same to people in Britain, right? But to me, it doesn't, right? A nigga is not the same for me. A nigger, you're definitely talking on a whole nother level now. And perhaps we need to change that, right? living life, right? Perhaps I need to change that. Perhaps some of us Americans need to get that together, right? And be and make that part of the whole getting on the same page, right? And understanding that certain things are just not acceptable at all. Um, yeah, yeah, we that's something to think about, and that's something I will be thinking about. You said, stop bragging about your glorious vacations before I dox you for insensitivity towards the poor and stuck. Okay. You said we were outraged. In note, we heard rappers saying it first. True, 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 true. True, true, true. Okay, guys, let me play a quick timer for everybody because then we're going to get into the anti-black stuff and we're going to talk about AAS, okay, and her anti-black behavior and the differences in her behavior and some of the other things we have experienced in the sector. You said we were outraged when we heard rappers and comedians in the 80s say it. Okay, that's interesting to know. And just to know from other perspectives and other parts of the world how they feel about the N word, right? And the difference, how us Americans might make a difference in nigga and nigger, right? And other blacks and other spaces don't, and that's something to just kind of contemplate and to just think about. And whether or not it is to remain appropriate to keep using this slang that we use amongst each other, right? I mean, I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon, especially when you have bad habits, or habits that you're used to. Those are things that are kind of hard to break, right? Especially if these are things you've always done. But again, it's just something to definitely contemplate and to think about. You said sounds the same as if a racist says it respectfully, my opinion. And when you think about it that way, it does, it really does. You said when she's, especially if you're not used to hearing it all the time, right? You said when she's referencing nigger, she's not referring to me. She doesn't have the authority to give me a name or make me answer to anything my mama ain't gave me. And that's a fact. That is a fact. You said she can continue to sit down like she has been. Okay. He said, and hold the coats at the club. Okay, child. You said ER or AR, there is no difference. White people say it, it's the same too. And that is true. Because if white people say nigga, we are just as offended, right? Hell, when Muslims said it, everybody got offended, right? More people than people thought. What I find upsetting about our space is that we've got people jumping out the window, actually defending it, right? Having conversations on why it's okay because it's a Black person saying it, or why it's okay because it's this or because it's that. It's not okay, and it really, we do have to speak to the condition of ourselves, and what anti-blackness actually is, right? Because if we don't understand, or if we're not educated on that, we're a lost people, right? And we can't just be like, just lost out here in the sauce without knowing the history of this stuff and understanding this stuff, and getting to a better place, in a better space. And it starts with conversations like this. So you said, nigger is a racist epithet, but the term nigga we use as a group to denote camaraderie. Hey, nigga, or we use it to chide, correct one another. Nigga, if you don't stop playing with me. Yeah, I was talking about that the other day, when we were talking about the word, right? When I talked about the hard ER word. I was talking about the etymology of the word, right? And how the nigga word is used against amongst African Americans or amongst Black people, as a term of endearment. It's the same as with gays. They may use fag or something with each other, but it's not okay for somebody who's not in the homosexuality or the LGBT community to use those same terms, right? Now, I'm not saying that somebody in the LGBT community everybody in the LGBT community would be okay with those terms. But within the LGBT community, as amongst any other community, they have certain terms that are used against them from other groups that they use with each other to take away the sting of what is intended to hurt them. Okay. And that's the same with African Americans. It's the same with Black people. We have terms that we use with each other that other motherfuckers can't say. You understand? It's the same with women. We have terms with each other that we can use, such as bitch, right? That a man will get knocked the fuck out for calling us, right? Like, we got to understand that. And we got to be okay with Black people being able to do that, right? We are always put in a box of, oh, we have to be this way. We have to live that way. We must do this. We must do that, right? But in actuality, it's okay for us to live, right? It's okay for us to laugh. It's okay for us to laugh at things and to joke with one another and to roast one another at the same time, but then have a line of defense amongst us, between us and other groups, where we don't allow those things from other groups. And also, we don't even allow those things within our group to be hateful and hurt and used to hate us and used to hurt us, right? The same with the LGBT community. Okay. Yes, somebody amongst one another could be like, hey, fag, hey, whatever. But somebody cannot still in the LGBT community use those terms to hurt someone. Okay. They might be able to use those terms as terms of endearment with each other, but not to hurt each other, period. So there is the differences with that I think, right? I could be wrong, but that is my opinion about it. And like I said, we're often scrutinized as Black people much more on what we do or what we accept, possibly because we are the most oppressed, right? And so because of that, we're always trying to clean up everything and constantly put things away and make things right and make things good in front of everybody, because we don't want, us to appear a certain way and appear weak, right? I get that. But we have to allow ourselves to be humans as well. You know what I'm saying? We have to allow ourselves to experience life like everybody else does, right? And to experience the same things, to have camaraderie amongst each other and so forth and so on. Shout out to you, Samba, for that, because I absolutely agree. You said keeping it 100, that's just semantics. It sounds the same, no difference. Well, I understand, but like, if putting it in the perspective I did, I don't know, maybe you could see it that way a little bit more. You said, I understand why people are addressing it now, but if folks could keep ignoring her like she's used to, she'd eventually put her beak back in her pocket. Okay. He said, living life, you're British is different for you. Yeah, it probably is over there. You said, my son or the sun in the sky. Sun or sun sound the same, right? Yeah, but that's not the same type of energy. You know what I mean? You said this is a bit of an ADOS thing. Yeah, I think it is, or even Aboriginal thing. You said some sun and sun do not have the same definition. Respectfully, I do appreciate your sentiments. However, you said bare feet or the big brown bear sounds the same. Bear and bear sound not the spelling. Yeah, but it's a different energy. Like, okay, so if I'm talking about bare feet, I would definitely be not talking about a big brown bear, right? So if I'm saying, yo, my feet are bare, even if you thought you couldn't spell, right? Even if you couldn't spell and you thought I was saying BEAR, it's still a different meaning, right? Than me talking about nigga and nigger, okay? Those two are different meanings. They really are. And depending on who says both of the words, definitely makes a difference too. So, but one of the words, the nigger word, is just not acceptable from anybody, period. It just doesn't matter. There's no joke on that. There's no game on that. There's no nothing. Anybody outside of our group, it is not okay for them to be like, what up, nigga? That's not okay either, right? And then, but somebody amongst my group that's be like, what up, my nigga? I'm not offended by that, right? I'm just not. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay. Just like any other group. Just like I could be like to my female friends, I could be like, yo, bitch, what the fuck you doing today? Or bitch, what you want to do today? Right? But if a man comes up to me and be like, bitch, what you doing today? I'm gonna be like, what? Like, who are you talking to? You understand what I'm saying? It has a totally different meaning than it would be from one of my girlfriends. You understand? It's just a totally different meaning than it is from coming from a man. Like, but for some reason, when Black people are distinguishing that, we're having a hard time seeing that, as if we're not allowed to do that, right? We're not allowed to have camaraderie amongst one another. We're not allowed to have our own code, our own language amongst each other, right? We're not allowed to do that. We have to stick to, whatever it is in order for us to appear not weak in front of the white man. And I don't think that's right. I think we should be able to have that, I really do. You said, brother of a certain age, you said, living life is the perceived intent that makes a difference. And I agree. You said, doesn't matter about the accent, it's the sound. Okay. All right. You said, living life, technically, you're right. However, your point of reference is a bit different. Yeah. And I do agree with what she said, right? You said exactly, what's up, LV? You said exactly, T-Pre. Me as a straight man, no, it's common sense. If I use the B word or F word, it's going to be perceived as different. I know the assignment. Exactly. Goddamn well not to run down on T-Pre and call me a bitch, but one of my female friends can be like, what up, bitch? What you want to do today? And I'm not going to be offended by that, right? And I think that's okay. I really do. I absolutely think that's okay, right? But a man is not going to run down on me and be like, yeah, what's up, bitch? Like, what? It's going to have a totally different perception. I'm just going to have a different perception from it. You said, I get you keeping it. Okay. You said, we are all Black folks, but there's a life experiential difference depending on where in the world your Black ass lives. And I agree with that. I do think there should be a code amongst all of us, right? Within the community. Like I said, Black people have different experiences across the world, right? But I do think that it's important. Hey, Steph, I appreciate you being in the building. Shout out to you. I do think that it's important for us to have a certain code on what is acceptable amongst all Black people, right? Like the word nigger itself is just not okay. It's just not, right? But have an understanding of why maybe African Americans or ADOS people may use that term, right? May use the nigger term as opposed to nigger, but nigga, right? We were some of the most oppressed Black people in the world, right? Our people. And so we have a certain camaraderie amongst us, and we have a certain language amongst us that should be acceptable and should be okay. And we shouldn't be browbeat for it, especially when everybody so easily accepts other groups doing the same thing. You know what I mean? So that's just my thoughts on that. You said according to my calculations, the word right means bundle of sticks. Yeah, and then it does, right? But that word is very offensive in the LGBT community, right? And but yet LGBT community members may say that amongst each other, right? But there is not, as a term of camaraderie or a term of endearment, but not to insult each other. But if somebody in the LGBT community uses the term to actually insult somebody, or if somebody outside of the LGBT community uses the term at all, has a completely different point of view, a completely different meaning. Not sure why that's not understandable when it comes to the N word, right? Or when it comes to nigger and nigga, right? And the differences with those. All right, guys, let's go ahead and read into this anti-blackness. And again, I'll put a link to this in my description box as well. Okay. So it says from James Baldwin, the reason people think it's important to be white is that they think it's important not to be black. Okay. Now let's define anti-blackness and anti-black racism. Anti-blackness is defined as the beliefs, attitudes, actions, practices, and behaviors of individuals and institutions that devalue, minimize, and marginalize the full participation of Black people, visibly or perceived to be of African descent. It is the systemic denial of Black humanity and dignity, which makes Black people effectively ineligible for full citizenship. The anti-Blackness paradigm positions Blackness as inherently problematic, rather than recognizing the long, rich, and diverse history of Black people throughout the African diaspora, and acknowledging that Black communities across the United States and the world have been severely disadvantaged as a result of historical and contemporary systemic racism. Anti-Blackness is also closely related to anti-darkness, colorism, as it amplifies and prioritizes proximity to whiteness. Colorism, the term used to describe the unequal treatment of and discrimination against individuals based on their skin tone, is rooted in and perpetuates white supremacy and racism by privileging and upholding Eurocentric beauty standards. Eurocentric physical features, i.e., lighter skin, narrower nose, straighter hair, are afforded greater value and considered more desirable than Afrocentric physical features, i.e., darker skin, broader nose, and more coarse hair. Thus, the closer to whiteness and further away from Blackness individuals are, the more privilege and power they are assigned in society, and in essence, the more power they have. Okay, so let's go ahead and look into a little bit more of this. Now, many notable scholars in the area, including W.E. Du Bois, Angela Davis, Abram X. Kendi, and Michael J. Dumas, have illustrated a complex and disconcerting vision of anti-Blackness and what it has offered white Americans. The policies and practices designed to uphold white supremacy are the same policies and practices that harm Black people and communities. Dumas argues that the aim of theorizing anti-Blackness is not to offer solutions to racial inequality, but to come to a deeper understanding of the Black condition within a context of utter contempt for the acceptance of violence against the Black, hence anti-Blackness lives in values and beliefs that can render Black bodies disposable, resulting in, among other things, the over-surveillance, over-policing, and under-protection of Black people in American society. This inability to recognize Black humanity is, in part, what maintains white supremacy. Now let's talk about anti-Black racism. Anti-Black racism is a specific kind of racial prejudice directed towards Black people or those perceived to be Black. More than merely a product of a few bad actors or individual prejudice, anti-Black racism is systemic and structural. It systemically marginalizes Black people and communities and devalues Blackness in all contexts. Although the past few years have brought about more familiarity with concepts like racism and white privilege, the concept of anti-Blackness is often overlooked. The term racism, however, fails to fully capture the experiences of Black people, including but not limited to Black men, Black women, men, trans Black people, Black gender nonconforming, non-binary, Black youth, Black girls and boys, Black families, Black migrants, Black communities, etc. Thus, we can no longer afford to rely simply on our understanding of racism generally, lest we flatten, minimize, or distort the Black experience in America. We must be intentional in our acknowledgement of the specific harm caused by anti-Black racism. Moreover, this concept pushes back against the notion that all racial and ethnic minority groups have similar lived experiences that can be generalized into one category, like POC, people, person of color, or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Anti-Blackness is without analog, hence, such comparisons or conflations serve to undermine the specific centrality of anti-Blackness to U.S. society, its institutions, policies, and practices. And to be clear, one does not have to be white to contribute to anti-Blackness or adopt anti-Black attitudes. In fact, anti-Black racism is not just the racial oppression of Black people by whites, but by other racial and ethnic groups as well, all of which have themselves been heavily influenced by white supremacy. Indeed, anti-Blackness and anti-Black racism reside and thrive within institutions and ideologies of white supremacy, whiteness, and fear of Blackness, and have a profound effect on anyone forced to engage with those institutions and ideologies, irrespective of their own racial or ethnic background. Let's go into a little bit of history of this. So, the history of anti-Blackness and anti-racism. Perhaps more than any other facet of American life, the issue of race and anti-Black racism specifically has been the defining characteristic of this country. Indeed, the economic, social, and moral foundation of the United States has been shaped largely by the 400 years of chattel slavery, state-sanctioned terror, legal and de facto segregation, mass incarceration and over-policing, voter disenfranchisement, and ongoing discrimination that continue to dominate both our history and our current reality, all of which is rooted in the notion that to be Black is to be inferior, incapable, unworthy, less than human, and most importantly, deserving of the physical and psychological mistreatment and marginalization to which we have been subjected. In this sense, anti-Blackness is part of the foundation upon which the United States was built and has been a way of life in this country from its inception, whether it be the wealthy white male power structure bent on taking whatever steps are necessary to maintain its control over Black and brown people and communities, or the poor and middle-class white mainstream, which has been convinced that whatever troubles or obstacles they may be experiencing in their own lives, their ultimate value lies in their whiteness, which will always prevail over Blackness, no matter the circumstances or the context. As many have suggested, the meteoric rise of Donald Trump over the last several years and overtly racist undertones of his 2016 presidential campaign in particular are directly correlated to the ascendance of our first Black president, quote unquote, right? The deep-seated anti-Black and anti-immigrant sentiment among many white Trump supporters, while always percolating below the surface, revealed itself repeatedly in the wake of Barack Obama's election to the presidency from the racially charged threats and protests by disgruntled white voters in the days and weeks following the 2008 election to the violent 2017 Unite the Right rally by white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia. Even among Black and brown people themselves, the claw of anti-Blackness has taken hold, leading many Black people and the communities to internalize this sense of inferiority and question their own worth, both as individuals and as a collective. As suggested above, the concept of colorism itself arises out of an internal disdain for darker skin tones and a reference for lighter skin tones, and has been a source of discord and division in the Black community and across the African diaspora for generations. As such, anti-Blackness impacts every aspect of our lives, from education to employment, housing to healthcare, access to transportation to the administration of our criminal legal system. Long-standing inequities across all of these areas have combined to maintain the status quo over time and make it impossible for Black and brown communities to compete or close the educational wealth gap. And to be clear, these inequities are neither coincidental nor unconnected. Rather, anti-Blackness in all its manifestations has been and continues to be an essential part of the concerted effort among the white establishment to entrench its own power. In particular, the anti-Blackness crusade has been used to destroy, devalue the collective identity of Black people, criminalize Black people and communities, thus leading to fewer opportunities, more poverty, more dependence, and less political power, and marginalize Black people and communities physically and otherwise to facilitate their exclusion and or erasure from privileged spaces in our society. Okay, let me look into this a little bit more because this is pretty long. I know there's a few other things I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about criminalization. In recent years, the manifestations of anti-Blackness in the context of the criminal legal system have garnered perhaps the most attention amongst Americans. In the wake of many high-profile police killings of Black people over the last decade, all too familiar lists include Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, George Floyd, and countless others. White America has been forced to confront the disproportionate harm being suffered by Black communities at the hands of law enforcement. This is in addition to the collective realization among conservatives and liberals alike that mass incarceration generally is not only cruel, often unnecessary, and extremely expensive, it has also devastated Black and brown communities in particularly tragic and far-reaching ways. Of course, the seed of anti-Blackness was planted in our criminal legal system from the very start. It is well documented that, particularly in the South, state legislators passed a slew of criminal laws in the wake of emancipation, aptly referred to as Black codes. That were designed specifically to target newly freed Blacks. The Southern white establishment readily took advantage of the gaping loophole in the 13th Amendment that still allows for the involuntary servitude of people in prison and used the penal system to exert physical control over a Black population that they could no longer legally enslave. It should come as no surprise then that anti-Black racism continues to rear its ugly head in the context of our criminal legal system. So I just wanted to go into that and just kind of speak on that. And then finally, I want to talk about health, okay? Historical and contemporary anti-Black racism has negatively contributed to the physical, emotional, psychological health and well-being of Black people. In fact, in recent decades, research has shown how anti-Black racism at individual and institutional levels contributes to poor health outcomes. For example, Black people suffer from disproportionately high rates of morbidity and shorter overall life expectancy compared to other racial and ethnic groups in the United States. Moreover, the cumulative experiences of anti-Black racism has been linked to chronic stress and weathering, a process in which biological age accelerates faster than one's chronological age. Systemic anti-Black racism within healthcare settings has also resulted in health disparities in testing, pain treatment and management, and the quality of longevity of patient visits. For instance, research has demonstrated that anti-Black attitudes and practices in medicine betray a very significant level of disregard for Black women in particular, i.e., mistreatment during childbirth, delayed prenatal care. And most recently, we have seen the devastating impact of anti-Black structural racism in healthcare as Black communities continue to be ravaged by COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a little bit old, guys, from a disproportionate lack of access to testing and treatment to the prevalence of pre-existing medical conditions that make the virus more deadly. Black communities have struggled to weather the storm, and unfortunately, inequities of our healthcare system are likely to remain and or even get worse for the foreseeable future as the presence of anti-Black racism continues to be a critical barrier to enacting health policies to improve health equity. All right. Now, let's go ahead and do this. Well, I'm going to do this as the final part. This is social concepts of value. Okay. Anti-Black racism affects social concepts of value in a myriad of ways. When Black people were stolen from their homeland and sold into slavery, we were valued for our labor, but not valued as human beings. As noted above, the framers of the Constitution, all white men, originally assigned a value of 3/5 of a human being to Black folks. This was the result of a compromise made by Southern whites who wanted to boost their representation in Congress and Northern whites who did not want Blacks to be counted at all. Black people were abused, raped, castrated, and malnourished, among other things, throughout the nearly 250 years of slavery in this country. When slavery was abolished, Blacks were not given any restitution for the malevolence we endured. Instead, anti-Black racism took the form of white hoods and racist laws that did not allow Black people to experience any true freedom at all. As such, our value to American society has been rooted in our economic contribution, whether as enslaved people, prisoners, laborers, or consumers, rather than in our humanity. As a result, when Black people are mistreated, discriminated against, abused, or murdered, there is little concern amongst the powers that be, and even amongst us. In addition, anti-Black bigotry encourages the public to dismiss harm when it's done to communities of oppressed populations. Throughout the history of this country, and even presently, Black people have been publicly attacked physically and otherwise without any significant response from the general public. Still to this day, whether it is in the wake of police shootings or some other context, Black people have had to educate white people about the history of violence amongst our communities and the current acts of brutality, both figurative and literal, that continues to dominate and to dominate the present Black condition. All bigotry feeds in ambience, as the late Desmond Tutu once said. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. But in order for the public and white America in particular to be invested in pushing back against anti-Blackness, they must find and appreciate the real value of the Black experience. Now, we're done reading that article, and I'm going to get into you guys' comments in just a second. But I really think it's important to see the differences in anti-Blackness, right, and roasting one another amongst ourselves within our community. Okay, there is a major difference in the two. Now, again, I am not here to make a suggestion on what you should view as anti-Black. If you feel that whatever someone is doing to you should be considered anti-Black, you are entitled to that. You have the right to that because of what we have experienced as people. We have the right to be overly sensitive about these things. We have the right to appear overly sensitive, or what I mean to say. We have the right to poke the bear about this stuff, right? Because of how oppressed we have been and what we have experienced as people across the whole African diaspora, right? But particularly in Black America, okay, what we have experienced here and what our people have experienced. So I think it's absolutely okay And I think it's not okay for us to, we need to listen to each other and allow each other's experiences to be what they are, right? And not take that away from each other. Because ultimately we do have a person in our sector who has constantly put out anti-Black statements, constantly done anti-Black things to this community, has constantly tried to physically have people actually physically, mentally, and emotionally harmed, just disagreeing with her, right? And it's because of clearly her hatred for Black people, particularly foundational Black Americans, okay? She just has a hatred for us. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate from her past and from, what she has experienced in life. But that's just where she's at. Here's the thing. Ultimately, if she doesn't really affect your bottom line, it doesn't matter, right? She's a dying breed with what she's doing. So it really doesn't matter. But if it does, you know that you have recourse, for her. And now that we know where she's at, we know what's going on with her. We know that she can no longer just put out these anti-racist statements and do these racist things without there being consequences for these things, right? And ultimately, I think she's the biggest fish in this situation. And I think we need to distinguish between the two, right? When we're talking about what we'll accept in this space and what we won't, or what overall should be accepted, right, in this space or shouldn't. I think overall, there's an understanding of the anti-Blackness and where that is coming from. I think you are entitled to feel that others are jumping on that bandwagon. I think you're entitled to that. But I don't think everybody needs to jump on that same bandwagon. I think people can have a difference of opinion in that. But I don't think there's any room for a difference of opinion when it comes to actual anti-Blackness that is distinguishable, that is, yes, this is what they're doing 100%. And, we're not going to pretend that that's not what they're doing, right? I think there's a difference in that. And that is what I'd like to see the sector get to a space where we can say, yes, calling us niggers and all this other stuff, that is absolutely part of the problem that we experience as Black people. Okay, that is just the bottom line. We're not accepting that. But roasting me and talking shit about me is a little bit different, right? Making racial slurs towards me about my skin tone, about, what you think Black mothers do with their kids and those kinds of things, that's a bit different, right? As opposed to just roasting me. I think there's a difference in just roasting me or just talking shit. And I think there's, we just need to distinguish those and just have a full understanding or an understanding of where that all comes from. So that's just my thoughts on that. Let me go ahead and look at you guys' comments, see what you guys are saying. Truly appreciate everybody for their participation and for being in the building. Make sure that you guys do hit the like button. We're actually about to end the show in a few minutes. All right. Okay. So you said, okay. You said bundle of sticks. Nah. Stephanie said, what's kind of interesting is we use it to insult, but it's in the context. Right. You said, hey, Stephanie Collins. And you said money, hey, money to burn. You said they do that in schools, quick to label our children problematic. Most definitely. They will label our children problematic. The disproportionate care for African-American women with prenatal care, I can definitely speak to that. I can speak to a lot of things when it comes to that. I may do an actual video on that in the future. And what I believe and what his therapists also believe happened to my son in regards to his birth, right? I definitely think that had a lot to do with what's going on with my son and so forth. So, yeah. You said bundle of sticks to be tossed in the fire. It's a biological reference, kind of nasty, child. Yeah, that I do believe that about my son, and others believe it too. We just can't prove it. You said keeping it 100. You said, yep, whatever you are in the world. You said living life. I hear you. I really do. But we Edos have a history like none other, except those that live in the Caribbean. Right. I agree. I definitely agree. You said living life. You said I'm not negating other Black folks' experiences, but the point of reference is American. Yeah, I agree. You said absolutely. You said money to burn. Yeah, bundle of sticks. You said Riz Lyrics is what I do. You said the whole word needs the bend. It doesn't come from a positive place. It doesn't. It doesn't. You said that's hella random, Riz. You said I definitely co-sign that living life. You said living life to the fullest. Yeah, LOL. I was laughing at your laughing at my last comment, but I replied slow. I was in the kitchen. You said I've heard it said it say in a funny way though. Plus, you said me too, living life to the fullest. You said sing it in rap songs. I can't lie. Okay. You said love and hip hop in its fullest. Okay. You said money help a random for real. Hella random for real. You said, is there any wonder there are many issues between Black men and Black women? Look what we've got to deal with. Exactly. Exactly. We're just oppressed all the way around. You said keeping it, you said maybe it should be used in everyday speech. It shouldn't be used in everyday speech. You said exactly. It's tricky as we like to sing it. You said it's such an ingrained word in our community, though. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. It isn't. It really isn't. I can't see that going anywhere anytime soon. You said keeping it 100, that's a shame. Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I don't know. I think we have just a different experience with it. You said Muslim, he's a puppet. We have something they need, melanin. Exactly, 100. That's why they're doing all these experiments on our children and snatching our kids and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You said living life to the fullest. Yes, he was moderate most, but we got to take the good with the bad. You said Muslim, he did for himself and not the community. He gets no credit from me. You said, Riz, that's an interesting theory, but very true. I look like a crumpled piece of paper and I'm only 42. He said, yes, we die more in childbirth due to lack of care. Absolutely. Absolutely. And our children may develop neurological issues and some other things just based off of childbirth, just based off of other things. Yeah, man. It's deep. It's so deep. It's not even funny. You said die more by the hands of police too. You said glad I was able to catch a live show, Miss T. Talk to everybody soon. I appreciate Money to Burn coming in the building. You said facts, Riz. And you said living life to the fullest. Unfortunately, that's what happens when the spotlight and money is on some folks. However, to his credit, he spoke out when allowed to. He said, Stephanie, piece of papers, dang. He said, living life. Okay, guys. So listen, I appreciate everybody for being in the building, guys. I just definitely wanted to go over these topics because I thought that they were great conversations. And it was a great conversation that I had with Alan. And again, I learned a lot from that conversation too. I think he learned from me as well. And it just turned out to be an excellent conversation. So make sure that you guys do go over and subscribe over to Alan. Make sure that you listen to the show so that you can catch the full context of what we did talk about. And if Photon'S Live is still live, y'all can go over there and check that out too, because that was hilarious with him and Smoke and him being all in his bag about the Carrie. Listen, guys, I appreciate everybody for coming in. We will be live tonight with the Vixen Chronicles, guys. We have part 3 coming up. I did do a members only last night to give you guys some tea in regards to some things and also to drop some of that stuff. But we will be on tonight in regards to this demonic hoe right here, y'all. Okay. So I will see you guys soon and talk to you guys tonight in regards to what is going on with this bitch. Peace, guys. See you guys soon.